treatment in lieu of prosecution and jail time, we ran into a lot of resistance from very traditional sources that we thought would be enthusiastic about treatment. The Department of Public Health, the jails itself, the criminal justice system, the judiciary. And I think it was just we were ahead of our times. I've learned with dealing with large bureaucracies, as I did in San Francisco, that it takes quite a while for new ideas to trickle down and actually gain some acceptance. And this was certainly no different. I found it very ironic that frontline law enforcement officers in the police, as well as the State Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement officers, were struggling with a system to try and find treatment in lieu of jail time for substance abusers. It was most ironic. And we still had a hard time in a system that is not used to responding in that type of way. And it really, truly, to finally try and find 10 treatment beds throughout the city for the massive amount of arrests we made every day was just quite a struggle. The challenge now is to invoke more quality, directed programs of intervention and treatment. And I think you won't find anyone in law enforcement, and I would not have said this even 3 years ago, who doesn't believe that treatment and as a solution is probably a much better solution for us than it would be to put someone in jail.
Preventive law for the lawyer makes it a more fulfilling practice. When I practiced law, I felt it was very important to develop a relationship with the client. And when you're practicing preventive law, when you are working with the client on not just the legal issues as such, but many issues that deal with the client's problem, that will keep the client out of the courtroom, it makes it a much more interesting practice for the lawyer.
So I see preventive law as elevating the clients or empowering the clients to help them make decisions. That the lawyer's role is essentially not elevated over the client. It's not to tell the client what to do, but it is to educate the client on things within the lawyer's scope of knowledge, but more importantly, to educate it for the purpose of the client then being in a position to make a decision that's best for the client.
One of the reasons people end up in lawsuits is because they have false expectations of what their rights are or don't know their obligations. And if the lawyers educate clients, which they do all the time, as to their rights and obligations, you're less likely to have unmet expectations or unfulfilled expectations and less likely to have frustration.
The more educated the client, the better it is for us to work with them. And in some cases, if a client comes to me after the fact, I may not be able to do anything for that client. And it's not something that I enjoy. And after 1996, when Congress changed immigration law, I found myself doing that too many times, and it was very frustrating to have to tell the client over the telephone, I'm sorry, there's nothing that I can do for you. It's too late. We have an obligation, not just ethically, but as professionals, to educate the public about changes in the law, especially when the consequences can be so drastic, such as permanent deportation from the country. So in the field of immigration law, of all fields, it's probably critical that the attorney take the initiative to advise the clients through different means, whether it's the media, whether it's writing a column in the newspaper, that changes have taken place and the people have to be aware of those changes and also inform them of the consequences. It's not something that we should see as an option. It's really a must.
It's always been the belief of most of us that preventive law is really the opposite of paternalistic because it really empowers the client to take charge of his or her personal or corporate or business future. One should be a lifetime counselor to clients, to be available, to talk, not worry about fees, to just be there.
that they can call me even with a problem that they may not think of as a legal problem, because they may not know it's a legal problem. It may be, or because it may be like a legal problem and somehow what I do may lead to an answer. And we're in the helping client service business, even when it isn't strictly within the pigeonhole of lawyering.
Once you start thinking in a fast-forward mode, you start thinking about how to build structures that are in the service of life rather than in the service of rules. What becomes important is to build structures that help people connect with one another, with their workplaces, with the organizations to which they belong, and with their communities.
I mean, obviously, preventive law is a catchphrase for a lot of ideas about how to practice. But I mean, to me personally, one of the things that it's a catchphrase for is to always think about 4 steps ahead, to see the problem around the next corner, to listen very quietly to your client and to understand your client's expectations, and to make sure that you can guide your client's expectations in and around the problems which are likely to arise.